Government starts process of regularizing hundreds of employees in the public service who have been working for years under temporary appointments. We'll have details to this story and more in the National Report.
Have you noticed an increase or decrease in your electricity bill? You know that changes in the fuel and non-fuel rates affect your bill. You should also be aware that changes in household activities affect your bill. Ask yourself these questions. Have the rates changed? Have there been more people at your home? Have your children been on holiday? Have you used your fan or air conditioning unit more often to beat the heat? Are any of your electrical appliances or equipment faulty? Have you added any new appliances such as transformers, water heaters, or pumps? Make it a habit to understand any changes on your electricity bill. For more factors that affect your bill, visit www.grenlec.com. Grenlec, energizing our Grenada.
With the details to the news for Wednesday, November 2nd, I am Rikisha St. Louis. Prime Minister Honorable Deacon Mitchell says government remains committed to restructuring the public service and regularizing hundreds of workers who continue to give service without confirmation. He said government has started the process of regularization to guarantee improvement in the rate of productivity in the public service. Prime Minister Mitchell was speaking during a recently held town hall meeting at the Grenada Trade Center Annex. Efficient functioning of the ministries, he says, depends on the restructuring and transformation of the public service.
There are positions which in the public service which must be filled if some of these ministries are to actually function. And so we are not waiting on pension reform to fill the positions in the Ministry of Agriculture. We are not waiting on pension reform to fill the positions in the Ministry of Labor. There was no deputy permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance when I got there. Recognizing the kind of workload that is taking place in the Ministry of Finance, there is a deputy permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance. So we recognize to actually make some parts of the government even function, that there are positions that are going to have to be filled. We recognize that some of these positions which have been frozen for a very long time are going to have to be unfrozen, and we cannot wait for the pension reform.
He explained that department by department, government commits to fix the issues of salary scales and staffing.
The size of the government in total is massive. You have established public servants, unestablished public servants, people who work with the government but they can't even get a letter saying they work with the government. People are on contract, for service, off service, and the list goes on and on. Well, I'm not even speaking about the Imani program. Right? So the reality is, the size of the government is the size of the government. Whether it's 15,000 checks every month, the government issues those checks. The problem is some people get a check, and when they retire, they will get a pension. Some people work for 30, 37 years, and when they retire, they have nothing to show for it. And usually, it is those who are the lowest paid are the ones who will walk out of the government with no pension and with nothing to go by. And then they have to come back for either what you call poor people's pension, for some other form of social security. And so the reality is, if we don't right-size the public service, and that's what we mean by having one public service, where for the most part, the people who work for the government work on the same terms and conditions. It's not easy. We didn't create the situation, and it has existed for a long time.
Minister for Legal Affairs, Labor and Consumer Affairs, Senator Claudette Joseph, shared the findings of the government's assessment of the public service. After several years, top positions within various ministries and departments still remain vacant.
We find generally our patriots in the public service, our brothers and sisters in the public service, are demoralized. No prospect of promotion, confirmation, or pension. they generally are demoralized, and therefore we are not getting the best. The country was not getting the best out of our public workers. We promised you change, we promised you transformation, and change and transformation is what we are going to bring you. And one of the first things we are going to do in delivering on that promise is to start fixing our public service and staffing all of the departments of government adequately so that we can deliver quality service to all of the people of Grenada.
Government anticipates positive sustainable development outcomes from the Grenada component of the UNDP Government of Canada funded Caribbean NGender project. The initiative focuses on gender equality, inclusiveness for the differently abled, and climate resilience through the implementation of strategies to support climate change and disaster risk reduction interventions. The Enabling Gender Responsive Disaster Recovery, Climate and Environmental Resilience in the Caribbean NGender project will assist in the institutionalization of gender responsive risk management, gender inclusive resilience, among others. Minister for Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs, Honorable Philip Telesford, during Tuesday's project launch, outlined the significance of taking sustainable action to promote economic growth and development.
Increased emphasis will be placed on policies and activities to protect our environment, particularly our coastal waters, actions to mitigate against the degradation of our lands, preserve and protect the quality of our water supply, and the promotion of balance between human needs and environmental sustainability.
Minister Gloria Thomas, responsible for social development and gender affairs, is optimistic that the NGender project contains viable solutions to support climate change, disaster risk reduction, and inclusivity.
This project will help service providers to improve efficient service delivery, accelerate post-disaster recovery, and risk mitigation. This initiative will empower the government to take ownership of disaster risk and exposure with better institutional arrangements. This will also address possible large-scale recovery needs that are shock responsive and better offer social protection finance for the most vulnerable. Implementation of the NGender project is important to the ministry as the deliverables will signal an improvement of the quality of life for vulnerable populations whom we serve.
Under the project, a multi-purpose center for the disabled will be designed and constructed at Lacalome St. David. Coordinator for the National Council of the Disabled, Hilary Gabriel, commended the government for recognizing the need to improve the lives of the differently abled. She said the center will provide training and capacity development opportunities as Grenada moves toward creating an inclusive society.
The thrust to design and construct a responsive, climate-smart, multi-purpose center is a welcomed initiative for GNCD, as Grenada will be well poised to continue enhancing the lives of persons with disabilities. This state-of-the-art building will definitely increase training opportunities, among other activities, for the community of persons we serve with disabilities. GNCD applauds the NGender project activities, which includes the building capacity and livelihood training for persons with disabilities, support to students with disabilities, and sign language training for first responders.
63 beneficiaries will receive startup kits, funds, training, and other support equipment in apiculture, solar drying, and hydroponics. This is the National Report. The news will continue after the break.
Grenada. The time for the national census is here again. Interviewers will be visiting your homes to gather information about you and your family. The data you provide determines budget allocation for health, grant funding for community projects, and government assistance for families and the elderly. The census is required by law, and so is your participation. We assure you that your information will be kept confidential. Do your part. Stand up and be counted, because we all count in this census. For more information about the census and your participation, contact the Grenada Central Statistical Office at 440-1369 or cso@cso.gov.gd.
Continuing the news, the Ministry of Legal Affairs, Labour and Consumer Affairs facilitated a one-day workshop on occupational safety and health for officers in various ministries to raise awareness on the issue within the public service. The workshop forms part of efforts by government to review and update the country's occupational safety and health policy in the not-too-distant future.
This workshop is geared at reaching middle managers in the public service who we anticipate will play a pivotal role in promoting safety in the workplace in keeping with the ILO Convention 155, which Grenada ratified in 2012. At the moment, there is a draft occupational safety and health policy, which we will review, and with input and consultation from and with all stakeholders, we will update and ultimately reduce into appropriate legislation.
That was Labour Minister, Senator the Honourable Claudette Joseph. Government, she explained, looks forward to working with stakeholders to develop a policy that is inclusive of all workers.
My government's aim is to promote and achieve the best working environment and industrial climate for all workers in the public and private sectors. That includes the informal sectors as well. This is key to achieving our transformation agenda that our country so desperately needs now. Poor working conditions and lack of attention to the health and well-being of workers will no doubt negatively affect productivity and the efficient delivery of goods and services.
Acting Labour Commissioner Mr. Reginald Lord, Dr. Nicole Ford, Ms. Sheena Pascal and Mr. Clint Gilbert facilitated the workshop. The Fisheries Division in the Ministry of Agriculture and Lands, Fisheries and Cooperatives has started its annual fishing vessel inspection throughout Grenada, Carriacou and Petite Martinique. The session kicked off at the Carriacou on Monday and continues at Melville Street, Grand Mall and Marigot St. John this week. This is a yearly mandate where fisheries officers ensure that fisherfolk are in compliance with the safety requirements needed to fish within the territorial waters of Grenada. Fisheries Extension Officer Lisa Chetram explains the safety and navigational items and functions needed to pass the inspection.
You ensure that the radios, the GPS, and all the other navigational items are intact, they're operating, and of course, especially the light, which you have all the different aspects of the light, the port, the starboard, the stern, and so forth. And then you look at the safety aspect in terms of your food ration. I always say that it is important to have your food ration. It's not your snack bucket, but it's a ration, and it's emergency only in time of need. Then you also have your flares, you also have your bailers and your oars. That's for the smaller vessels, but for the bigger vessels, ensure that the bilge pump is operating.
Chetram noted that this process is especially important to minimize mishaps at sea.
When we talk about fishing vessel inspection, we talk about health, we talk about safety, and safety is important. I remember hearing in the past that a lot of vessels would go out and persons would be lost at sea. But in most recent times, we realize because of the intervention of ensuring that persons are carrying all the necessary safety items on board, they have been quite minimized in that area. So we haven't heard much about persons getting lost at sea. We haven't heard much about persons, even being stranded out there because of the importance of this yearly mandate that we carry out. But it's not only on a yearly basis, but during the course of the year. Fishing vessels will come in, the newer ones especially, or persons who have missed it for some reason or the other, and we are going to do the inspections to ensure that once they go out fishing within the territorial waters of Grenada, they are in compliance with the safety aspect of it.
The National Insurance Scheme teamed up with the Fisheries Division. Public Relations Officer Lisa Douglas offered advice to fisherfolk on the importance of being covered for NIS benefits.
It's important that our fisherfolk realize that if something happens to them and they can't fish, they need to be covered. So if they get sick, if they get injured on the job, if they have medical expenses associated with that, especially for our divers. I'm sure you've heard about our divers who've gone out diving, got the bends. It's a debilitating disease. So we need to make sure they're covered. So if something happens, God forbid the good Lord calls them home, they have to make sure their families can also benefit. And also when they reach their golden years, that they do have a monthly source of income. They have to ensure that they can qualify for an NIS age pension. So we're here today collaborating with fisheries to get them registered and also to educate them on the benefits. Because we believe if they understand how NIS benefits them, what they can get from contributing, that of course they would get registered.
Inspection continues until the end of November. All registered and licensed fishing vessels are asked to be in their respective areas on the date and time allocated for inspection. All fishing vessels must be equipped with the stipulated safety items as required by the fisheries regulations. That story just ended the national report for Wednesday, November 2nd. Let's recap the top story. Government starts process of regularizing hundreds of employees in the public service who have been working for years under temporary appointments. On behalf of the entire news and production team, I'm Rikisha St. Louis saying thank you for joining us.